Holy City Center Radio is episode 367, and I am your host, Christian Sanger. Today is Friday, May 2nd, 2025. Hello, everyone. I hope you had an amazing week and have a great weekend ahead. If you need plans, holycitycenter.com/calendar is the place to go. And if you're just looking for the latest news, just knock off the calendar portion of that URL and go to the homepage, and you can see the latest news and happenings here in the Holy City. Just a quick FYI, I'm recording this episode a little bit earlier than I normally do. So if any big news happens, Thursday late afternoon and into the evening, that is why I'm not talking about it. I'm not expecting anything big to happen, but that just a quick FYI. I'm recording this a little earlier. And why is that? Well, I am going to go to the movies today. Yes, big exciting news. I'm going to go see the latest Marvel movie, Thunderbolts. Excited to see it. I'll be sure to report back. Some of you, I'm sure, are Marvel fans as well. I'll be interested to hear what I thought about it. But if you're not a Marvel fan, I get it. There's a lot of Marvel movies out there. It's tough to follow, and superhero movies aren't everyone's thing. But I'm excited and looking forward to it. So, recording early, big news happens. That's why I'm not talking about it. Before we get into the latest news, though, just a quick update on my life. My parents have been visiting, as I let you all know in previous episodes. Unfortunately, they did leave today. I'm recording this on Thursday, although you'll be listening to this on Friday or later. Had a great visit with them. It was about a week and a half or so, and also a few weeks prior to that, I went and visited them in New Orleans. They've been traveling down from Connecticut, and they were stopping at different places, and I talked about visiting them in the Crescent City. So even though they were only here for a week and a half, I was able to spend a long weekend with them over in New Orleans. So that was, kind of a nice combo to spend a good amount of time with them. Always could use more. I love when they're here. We have a great time. It's just nice having my parents here, just hanging out with them. Got things done around the condo, and just a great visit. We did go out to eat on their last night here. We went to Bowen's Island. They like going there, but we hadn't been in I think a couple years. We didn't go last year when they visited, so it was nice to get back there with them. And as usual, you guys, if you've been to Bowen's Island, you know the routine. Beautiful waterfront views, and the weather was perfect. A little breeze coming off the water, and so it was just like an amazing temperature. Not too hot, definitely not cold. And we were there as the sun was starting to set, so just beautiful, beautiful scenes all around us. Food was good, and that's always nice to go to Bowen's and just eat seafood, some of which just came fresh from the waters that you're looking at, especially oysters. And it was a great time being there. And we walked down on the dock a little bit just to kind of take it all in, take some pictures of the sunset. And it was just a nice last dinner for this trip with them. So really enjoyed that. Sad to see them go, but it was an amazing visit. The other thing, I just want to give a shout out to someone that I know from when I was in Connecticut. My brother ran into a former teacher of mine. My brother is a teacher and also coaches some sports. It happened to run into a former teacher that I had in high school, Michael Fury, who, back then was Mr. Fury, but was really only just a handful of years older than us. He was, pretty fresh out of college. But, of course, back then you see, but anybody who's older than you, especially a teacher, is a Mr., Mrs., or Miss, or what have you. So it's just weird. Even today, it's still weird that I'm using your first name if you're listening. But even though he's back in Connecticut, he said to my brother that he listens to my podcast, and he knew a lot about it. So I know that he was telling the truth, and he's told me before that he's listened. So thank you so much for listening. It means a lot. And it was great to hear you run into my brother. He was excited to tell me all about it. So again, thanks for listening, and I really appreciate it. He was actually he taught English and things, but I had him as the teacher for the school newspaper in my high school. So, my journalism days started then, although I don't consider myself a journalist by any stretch of the imagination anymore. It's journalism adjacent, I suppose. But yeah, that was the first true teacher I had when it came to, writing out articles and things like that. So made that even more of a reason to bring it up on the podcast, because as it does relate to what I'm doing. But that was a nice moment. But in any event, let's get into the latest news here in Charleston. All right, we've got an update on the situation involving the state treasurer, Curtis Loftis. The effort to oust the Republican from office has been put on hold as the South Carolina House is just a few days left in session. And House Speaker Merle Smith, who's also a Republican from Sumter, said that the lower chamber is not going to take up the Senate-led resolution to remove Loftis before the session ends on May 8th. Basically, he told News 2 here in town that they're going to focus these last few days of the session by trying to pass legislation instead of, taking up time discussing if Loftus should be removed from office or not. So it does appear that barring, some unforeseen circumstances where it does end up coming up, he will remain in office for the time being. As I mentioned, the Senate here in the state voted 33-8 to remove him from office due to, quote, willful neglect, unquote. And this is all related to his role in that $1.8 billion accounting error. You may remember me talking about that in previous episodes. Now, if the House did bring it up, a 2/3 vote would have been required to finally remove him from office. The Senate panel called for his removal back in March after a private forensic audit determined much of the, quote unquote, mystery money never existed. The audit found that $1.6 billion was the result of accounting errors during a bank conversion process that began in the mid 2010s, and the remaining $200 million was cash that belonged to the general fund. So you can go back and listen to old episodes or do a little search online for articles about that whole situation if you don't remember it. But the main headline here is that Loftus is going to survive, it appears, as the session is coming up on an end here in just a week. Unclear what will happen when the next session, happens. But for now, the state treasurer will remain in office. Another update, you may remember me talking about the constituent boards for Charleston School District. They are officially going to be removed. It was going through the House and the Senate and then was being sent to Governor McMaster's desk to sign. And that is exactly what ended up happening. So the signing of a law that will abolish constituent boards within the Charleston County School District is leaving some of these board members unsure what they're going to do next. Obviously these are people who have jobs or other obligations within the community, but this was something that they planned on being a part of. And as far as the school districts themselves, they're going to have to decide how exactly they're going to move forward in terms of the things that constituent board members did, who those obligations are going to fall to. So this started with House Bill 4014, which was going to ban the existence of these constituent districts and boards, which oversee, several different things, including student discipline cases, student transfers, and school zoning. These are different than your traditional county school boards or, district school boards. The constituent boards are made up of people within the community. Not that the school boards aren't, but they're a little bit different in terms of their makeup and how they operate, and as I mentioned, the types of things that they handle. On Monday, Governor Henry McMaster signed that law. That's why it's now official. And now the responsibility that they had is going to go to the district's board of trustees, which is that traditional school board that you're all probably familiar with. If you're wondering, the district superintendent, Anita Huggins, applauded the move on Tuesday when she was speaking to Live 5 News. So she's on board with this. She also said that the district is working with community members and principals through hearing panels to figure out a plan going forward. Huggins also said that the district is expected to share a formalized plan at a committee of the whole meeting on May 12th. So we should, about 11 days from now, we should have an idea of where those responsibilities are going to fall and how things are going to operate going forward. As far as saving money, it definitely will. Chief Financial Officer Daniel Prentice said that the move is probably going to save the district about $300 in savings. So that's a nice chunk of change. And we've talked about how the district has been spending lots of money due to some of their bungling of hires and lawsuits and things last year and the year before. So definitely a good thing that they're able to save that money. That's for sure. So how did this come to be? I mean, there's a lot of different reasons for it, but it partially started about there were some documents that were obtained by Live 5 News that kind of revealed what was going on behind the scenes. They were able to get a hold of affidavits and emails pointing to unrest and questioning the power of constituent members. Some of the accusations involved Constituent District 4 in North Charleston, which also saw a larger number of case overturns compared to other districts. From there, more than 50 principals asked the Charleston legislative delegation to consider disbanding the boards within a week. Following some public hearings, one hosting a large group of those advocating for the change and another with many opposing it, the delegation took its findings back to the State House, and, then went forward, and we're here with the boards being dismantled. If you're wondering, constituent boards have been around for a while here. They were created in 1968, and they were created around the 8 former school districts that were in place at that time. Like the Board of Trustees, these are elected positions. Many constituent board members consider themselves to be volunteers. I mean, they do make a little bit of money. It's about $20 per meeting, so it's not, anything huge. Another reason, even though they're getting a little bit of money, they're essentially volunteers. Now, district staff and some state lawmakers and the governor, for that matter, claim that this was the only remaining constituent district like this in the nation that had these constituent board practices in place. So another reason why it was probably pretty easy for this to skate through is it's not something that's done really anywhere else. So that's that. That's the end of the constituent school board districts here in Charleston County. And like I said, I'll keep you updated once we know who or how the types of responsibilities and obligations they had, who's going to be handling them and how so. So stay tuned for all of that. All right, here's another story highlighting, some of the changes that are happening due to the Trump administration. I've done this on multiple episodes, how their decisions as far as cutting funds or firing people, whatever other, executive orders or possible legislation, how it's affecting people here in the country, but more specifically, South Carolina and Charleston. Now, one such cut in funding is going to affect a project that was coming to the Old Village section of Mount Pleasant. The Federal Emergency Management Agency, aka FEMA, announced earlier this month that it was canceling its Building Resilient Infrastructure and Communities program after it had already been promised to Mount Pleasant. The city was supposed to get $5.5 million for its Edwards Park drainage project. So obviously this is relating to flooding. Everyone who lives here is well aware that this is an issue, not just in the Charleston city itself, but surrounding towns and cities like Mount Pleasant, for instance. So they had this project where the government was going to help fund it. It was already promised. It was in place. They were making plans based on that. And then it was just up and canceled. So the money was going to pay the biggest part of the $8 million in stormwater improvements for the Old Village, which included things like, bigger drains, more water pumps and things of that nature, all things to try to make it so flooding is less likely to happen. I mentioned this was already promised to the city, and they were planning on all this. I mean, they were ready to go out for bids. When there's government related projects, there's a bidding process, and they were ready to go with that. Like, this was a done deal, but now it's on hold and is likely to remain canceled. So I said it was canceled. There's always a chance that the administration could change their mind, as you've seen, whether it's tariffs or things being cut, quote unquote, accidentally. When there is blowback, sometimes the administration changes their mind. So there is a chance that this could come back, but right now it is canceled. And because of that, the town is now scrambling to find, some replacement money for these projects. Especially because, as it was reported in the Post and Courier, they have zero confidence that they're going to be able to land any federal dollars. So even though there is that chance, they are banking on the fact that this is going to be canceled, and they're not going to assume that that's going to change. And short of some miracle, either administration changing their mind or the state itself coming to bail out Mount Pleasant, this huge price tag is likely going to fall to local taxpayers. And not only is it likely to fall to taxpayers, the project will now cost even more money because infrastructure construction costs are going up every week, again, related to cuts, the immigration policies, and so on and so forth, we're seeing a rise in costs when it comes to these infrastructure projects. So the money that they were promised is, they're going to have to, the taxpayers are going to have to make that up in all likelihood, but it's also going to probably be even more money than was originally promised because of those rising costs. And obviously, this is something that Old Village needs. I mean, again, anyone who lives here knows that we need help with flooding. It's only getting worse in some areas. And if projects like this are put on hold, who knows when the next storm comes, what kind of damage it could do that wouldn't have happened if we were able to move forward with these projects. So, again, this waste, fraud, and abuse, that this Elon Musk run Doge and his Doge bags, we're supposed to go and find. Who thinks that preventing flooding, this project that was supposed to alleviate the problem of flooding specific to this section of Mount Pleasant, is that waste? Is that fraud? Is that abuse? Certainly doesn't seem to be abuse or fraud. And is it waste? I think if you ask the people who live there, they would say absolutely not. Again, the question, who voted for this? I don't think anybody has a problem with actual waste, fraud, and abuse being found and removed. But how did something like this come under that umbrella? It makes zero sense to me. And I would imagine you all are feeling the same way. All right, this kind of relates to culture wars. Hooray! We love culture wars, and we've been talking about them for years and years, it seems. This is kind of similar to the book bans we've seen certain people, particularly Moms for Liberty groups like them and the candidates that they back, trying to remove books from libraries, whether in schools or, city or county libraries and all other manner of things. Particularly, they're trying to block anything related to the LGBTQ community, anything that is even mildly remoted to sex and gender, and oftentimes race as well. And now, South Carolina lawmakers are considering a bill that advocates say would protect minors from pornography and obscene materials. We've heard this before, but opponents say it's actually a violation of civil rights. So, as usual, the concept of the people trying to push these laws certainly sounds reasonable. We definitely want to protect minors from pornography and obscene materials. I think we all agree with that. Devil is in the details, as usual. And as we've seen, a lot of times them calling things pornography or obscene are actually not. It's just they use a broad definition to try to silence and remove anything related to the LGBTQ plus community. And that appears that this is something that they are trying to do again. And of course, they don't realize the potential fallout that could happen when they leave things like this so vague. So they're calling it the Protection of Minors from Pornography and Obscenities Act. Again, they like to name bills where it sounds perfectly reasonable, but you have to actually look at what they're trying to do. Specifically, they're trying to change definitions in the current law to make them clearer. But as I've already said, it's actually doing the opposite of that. If passed, the bill could potentially criminalize school teachers and librarians for teaching or showing content that goes against these new definitions. This act looks to change the legal definition of what's considered, quote, harmful to minors, unquote, and also get a better definition of the word material that is in the current law. Lawmakers believe school teachers are taking advantage of the vague language in the current law to show kids materials with graphic images, sexual content, or foul language. Look, I'm not in school currently. I know people who are teachers in this state and outside of this state. I don't know any school teachers that are like, hey, there's some vague language in this law, so let's show these kids graphic images and sexual content. No one is setting out to do that. So this is already ridiculous on its face, but okay, let's see where this is going. Big surprise. The Horry County chair of the Moms for Liberty organization, shocker, shocker, they're always behind this stuff. His name is David Warner, and he says that he hopes that the bill passes, quote, to ensure our children are safe and this kind of content is not being put in front of our children, end quote. Meanwhile, the ACLU of South Carolina, their advocacy director, Josh Malkin, said that the organization is concerned by this drastic redefinition of certain words. So according to the bill, harmful to minors means quality of any material or performance or a portion of any material or performance that depicts sexually explicit nudity, sexual activity, or contains profane language. They try to define material as drawings, video recordings, films, digital electronic files, words, gestures, or other depictions or representations. So again, we do want to protect children from this stuff. We all agree with that. They try to word bills and try to present things that if you oppose them, you sound like a monster. They like to say like, "Oh, why do you want kids to see pornography and obscene materials?" Like, no, that's not what we're saying. We don't want them to see that. We just don't want this definition that you're trying to use to expand to things that are not obscene and that are perfectly normal for children to see and learn about. So Malkin, who works for the ACLU, tried to point out this ridiculousness by letting them know, based on what they're trying to pass, what other things would be banned from being taught in schools or being available in libraries. So he gave some examples, a book like 1984, or books like Everybody Poops, if you've ever heard of that. It's a children's book. Um, and any book, honestly, where a character goes to the bathroom would all be in violation of this new bill. By the way, it's House Bill 4123. If you want to write to your representative about it, that's the bill we're talking about here. So, again, uh, the title of the bill sounds perfectly normal. You look at the details, you realize, oh, wait, they're trying to, we know what they're trying to do here, whether it's LGBTQ in this situation, other times it's race. But they don't realize by trying to target that, they're inadvertently going to get rid of some of this other stuff that they don't actually have problems with. So you can see how ridiculous this all is. So where does this stand right now? Well, the bill was taken up to committee on this past Tuesday. They only had it go, they only talked for about 5 minutes before the committee ran out of time and had to adjourn. It's unclear if the bill will be discussed again. As I mentioned earlier in the episode, we're coming up at the end of the session. So this may end up going nowhere this session, but it's something certainly to keep an eye on because they're going to try to bring it back. And lastly, more about our state legislature. They are moving forward with a budget, and this budget does not have any of the so-called earmarks. These are things that are usually, tied to the budget. They're not really part of the, when you think about the state budget, you think of what's necessary, but then these are like specialty funding for legislators, like their pet projects, for, in their city. Sometimes they're nonprofits and helping them get funded. And obviously, sometimes earmarks are silly. They can seem borderline corrupt because, it's whatever a certain legislator is, something going on in their city or town, and they, maybe they promise someone like, hey, we're going to get this in the state budget to help fund you, and try to drum up votes, whatever it may be. But oftentimes it's just things like funding nonprofits. So on the plus side, there's no earmarks that can seem a little iffy, and people are certainly applauding that because again, not all these like pet projects should be funded by taxpayer dollars, or at least many people believe that. But of course, others are concerned that nonprofits that rely on state funding are no longer going to get the money that they were hoping for, and they are no longer able to provide critical services. Live 5 News did a really good story about this, where they talked to one such organization. That is, and I apologize, I'm never sure how to pronounce part of this organization's name, so I apologize if I get it wrong, but it's the Florence Crittenton Programs of South Carolina. That's here in the Charleston area. This is a nonprofit resource for pregnant teens and young women who have nowhere to go. So they rely on these earmarks in the state budget to provide a good chunk of their funding. Thankfully, when they spoke to someone in that organization, they said that they were going to continue to offer services, but they planned on expanding to fill the need. There's a high demand and they want to be able to help more people, but they're no longer going to be able to have that expansion, barring some major donations and things from the community, which is they're going to have to rely on if they're not going to get anything in the budget. There's only 6 days left in the current session, as I mentioned, six, working days for them. It's, a little bit more than that. But lawmakers are adamant about passing the budget before the session runs out on May 8th. So in all likelihood, this is going to get done, and some nonprofits are going to be left in the lurch without having, some of the funding that they were planning on. So certainly that's not good, at least in my eyes. I have no problem with some of my taxpayer money going to help nonprofits that are assisting people in need. I know others believe that the private sector should handle anything involving nonprofits. The state shouldn't be giving taxpayer money to them. Believe it or not, there are people that believe that you should just leave it to the individual. If they choose to donate their money, great. And look, I get that to an extent, but at the same time, if you leave it to the people, how likely are they to donate enough money, to match whatever it was that the state was going to give them? So again, just something to keep an eye on. Not a done deal, but I don't see the budget passing with those earmarks put back in. And that'll do it for this edition of Holy City Center Radio. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you to Lindsay Marie Collins with LMC Soundsystem for producing this and every episode of Holy City Center Radio. And thank you to Tyler Boone, whose music you hear in each and every show. Have an amazing weekend. I'm looking forward to being back with you already, though, which will be on Monday. Until then, though, have a great weekend. Good night and good luck.